You're listening to Keeping Up with the Knights, a podcast for the faculty and staff at Steele High School, allowing them to connect outside of the classroom. Teacher, coach, mentor, and speaker Michael Herrera, a past District Teacher of the Year, will sit down with fellow teachers and bring their stories to life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy these stories as they unfold on this episode of Keeping Up with the Knights.
All right, welcome back, Knight Nation, to another episode of Keeping Up with the Knights. I am your host, Coach Michael Herrera. I get the pleasure to sit down with Amanda Hartson. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day when I know you could get a lot done during this period. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting down with me.
No problem. Happy to do it.
Yes, well, thank you. So the beginning of every episode, I always like to start with what I call bell ringers. Just the beginning of class. Let's just kind of get to know each other by asking some shallow-ended questions, and then you'll shoot 5 back at me. So my first question for you, I typically keep it the same with all of the interviews that I have. If you could go back in time and high-five yourself for something that you did, what would you go back in time to high-five yourself for, and why?
That's hard. I think life is made up of so many little choices that you don't realize the path that it kind of leads you on. But I think probably going out on a blind date with my husband for the first time.
So he asked you, or how did that happen?
We had my roommate from my first 2 years of college is still one of my best friends, and her husband worked with my husband. And so they were talking to kind of set it up, and I kind of said yes. So they had a party. My friend was going to Russia to teach in Russia for a year, so they had a going away party for her, and they invited me and my husband and to kind of introduce ourselves. But that was kind of out of my norm.
Yeah.
I said, okay, y'all know me so well. Yes.
I think that's such a great answer. That's so true, because like if you hadn't gone, you wouldn't have ever met him or been married. So that's certainly a really good high five for that moment for sure. All right, question number 2. If you weren't a teacher, what would that other profession be that you would either pursue or choose?
Dream, I would love to be I would love to get paid to travel around the world and write about it, except I'm not a writer, but blog about it. I would love to somehow get paid to travel, but I'm not one I don't want to be eating all of the strange things and all the strange places. I just want to be.
So you don't want to be on Amazing Race. You just want to travel the world.
No.
I got you. Well, crazy instinct here. When I asked that question, that was like what popped into my head.
Really?
Yes. That's so weird. I don't know if you, did you
We've
post
talked so much about travel.
Okay.
No. But I mean, we've talked so much about travel, and I know that we've been similar places and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's where it came back. But right before you spoke, I was like, she's going to say travel. All right. So random question number 3. So you're going to go get breakfast tacos in the morning from wherever it is that you get breakfast tacos. What's your go-to breakfast taco?
Potato and bacon.
Potato and bacon.
I don't eat eggs, and I don't like cheese.
Are you vegan?
No, I'm not. I just don't. I mean, I'll eat eggs.
Well, obviously with the bacon, you're not, but I mean, people can still have, we're vegan at home, but we still eat meat from time to time. But I'd say 90% of the time we're vegan. So that's why I asked that. For those of you listening, I know that sounded really bad when she said bacon, but still. All right, potato and bacon it is. All right, question number 4. If you could go to Starbucks and share a cup of coffee or a tea or a drink with anybody dead or alive, who would that person be and why?
It would be my mom.
Okay.
I lost my mom almost 19 years ago, and
Wow.
It would be great to go catch up.
Yeah, no, I hear you definitely. And I'm sure you know this, that I just lost my mom this past year.
Yeah.
2 days after her birthday. So conversations for sure would just be amazing to, it's one of the things that I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have asked all of these questions to get some of these answers, but you just never know. So that's definitely a great answer. All right. So the last question I have for you is, what's like your go-to hobby? It's summertime. We're teachers, right? We've got some time on our hands. What's kind of like your go-to thing to do?
Travel. We've already talked about, travel. That's what my husband and I do. But this last year, we just had to cancel our second attempt to get to Germany.
Oh, no.
We were supposed to go to Germany last May when everything got locked down. And then we were supposed to go this May, but they just canceled our flights. Oh. So that's not going to work out. But our daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter live in Germany. So they've been there for, I guess, a year and a half now. So we've been trying to get over there to see them.
Gotcha. So it's a pretty regular thing for you guys to always go somewhere maybe each summer? Every summer. Okay.
Pretty much every summer. Last year was weird.
So outside of this COVID nonsense, is your typical destination outside of the U.S., or do you sometimes travel within the U.S.?
Usually outside of the U.S., but summer 2019, we went with my husband's parents. We took them with us on a cruise to Alaska.
Awesome.
So that was fun. And we're actually so grateful that happened that summer, because summer 2019, we did the cruise to Alaska with them. And we also did a cruise to Galapagos Islands, or a cruise in the Galapagos Islands. So we did that. And then December 2018, January 2019, I guess, we did a South America cruise. And then December 2019, our daughter got married in Disney World. So had COVID been a year earlier, it would have messed up all of those plans.
Jeez. So I'm going to go ahead and add a sixth question here, just because I'm curious now. How many total cruises have you been on?
Oh, gosh. Guess 10 to 12.
Okay. We're right there. We're in the same ballpark, because my wife and I have taken 11. So we took 11 cruises in 10 years. So we went pretty much, we went once a year. And then after that, that's when we had kids. So, we spent 11 years kind of traveling. So, but anyway, those are my 5 questions. It's your turn. Shoot 5 away at me.
Okay. Where would you like to visit that you haven't been to yet?
You know what? I want to go to a different continent. I think it'd be fun to visit like Africa, and just, I don't know, just kind of be in nature, but maybe also participate in some kind of humanitarian while we're there. But obviously I want vacation, but just somewhere just remote and different, nothing too specific.
Awesome. If you could write a book, what would it be about?
Great question. That is actually on my bucket list. I do want to write a book. The initial thought process for me is, and that's kind of why I got into doing podcasts, is I want to talk to like the elderly people at a nursing home. I want to know their stories. I want to know, there's so much to be told from people with obviously the amount of life that they've existed. And I think that I want to tell their story in some kind of memoir form, where every chapter is about a different person, and just honor those people. But I'm also a person who loves to read books, motivational books, spiritual books, self-help books. That's kind of my genre of reading. And I use that for just, self-improvement, whether it's in the classroom or as a coach, or even as a husband. And so I would really want to try to capture all the thoughts that are in my head. The basketball players tend to nickname me the preacher, because once I get going, like I just keep going and I get fired up, speaking. So I would want to try to get somebody to help me hone in on my thoughts and put it into a book. So maybe I answered that with 2 different types of books.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What was your favorite TV show as a kid?
When you said favorite TV show, the first thing that comes to mind is Friends, but I wasn't necessarily a kid. I mean, I guess I was like high school, college, but you're still a kid then. So,
Exactly.
definitely Friends for sure.
And if you could have a superpower, what would you choose?
I think Courtney Matthews asked me this question, and I'm going to answer it the same way. It was to fly. I just think it'd be super cool just to like fly everywhere and see it from a bird's eye view would be pretty cool. So I'd say fly. That'd be my superpower, like Superman.
Yep. And then last one, what's the most interesting or surprising thing that you've learned doing these podcasts?
And I'll simplify it, that everybody has a story. And I know I've kind of used that word multiple times already, but that's, to me, the parallel is our students, is that every student has a story. And I think it's important for us as teachers and educators to get to know our students on that kind of level, because then we can better reach them. I'm thinking of a kid right now, and I've mentioned the student's story before, but I have a student who's never here. And on first glimpse, you're like, okay, this kid's just skipping. But then I come to find out, and she's caring for her grandfather as he's dying of cancer. And she's the caregiver. And it's like, and this student still has straight A's. And so like when I do see this student, it's amazing to know that she's taking care of everything at home. And she has enough sense to put herself together to then put on the hat of a student. And it's just like that. And she's one of, several students that I have in class, just like you do. And I think if we get to know each other's story, we can better connect to each other. And that's precisely the reason why I do this podcast, is because I really feel like if we're really going to be here to serve our students, if I can't reach a kid in my classroom for whatever reason, because they don't gravitate towards my sarcasm or whatever, maybe they're going to gravitate towards you. And if I know you just a little bit better on a personal level, selfishly, then I can hopefully better serve a student. So I think it's really important that we get to know each other's story, because we're human first and we're educators second. And that's kind of my approach to education, is that these students in our classes are human first and they're students second. Have you ever seen the movie Patch Adams?
No.
So there's a scene in the movie, and I've talked about it before, where Robin Williams plays a doctor. It's a true story. And essentially he's going through medical school, and they're in the hallways, and there's about 15 medical students, and they're hovering over this patient. And the lead doctor is teaching them about her condition. She's got these symptoms, and he calls her by her disease, not by her name. And so as a medical student, he's kind of raising his hand in the background, and he's like, "Sir, I've got a question." And so all the eyes kind of turn on him and on Patch Adams, and he says, "What's her name?" Because they never once addressed her by her name. And so long story short, throughout the movie, he talks about, you treat the human being first, then you can treat them as their patient. And I've always loved that scene, because that's how I approach teaching.
Well, it's all about relationships.
Absolutely.
You got to build the relationship with the kids, and yeah.
Yep. So a friend of mine actually has a podcast called the Relationship Centered Learning Podcast. And I've listened to his, and he does a fantastic job. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that everything begins with relationships. So fantastic questions. I believe that's 5. Is that right?
Yep,
okay.
it.
5 questions. All right. So first question right off the top is, talk about your childhood. Where did you grow up? Where are you from? And what was your childhood life like?
Well, I kind of grew up all over the place. We moved about every 3 years until I got into 8th grade. And everybody usually says military, but no. My dad was an engineer for an oil company. So we kind of followed the oil. So I was born in Indiana when he was in grad school. And then we moved to Houston and Louisiana and Colorado. And then we moved overseas. And we moved to Jakarta, Indonesia for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
And that was really that kind of molded me with the whole travel and experiences and so forth. That's really kind of where I got a lot of that love, was living there for 3 years. And then
What age were you at that point?
5th, 6th, and 7th grades.
Okay.
So a really, really good age. And it was one of those things where Jakarta had a lot of civil unrest. So there were elections every summer. And so all of the expats had to basically leave the country for 2 or 3 months, just to kind of keep us safe. But it was summer vacation. So we got to go on some incredible vacations and kind of go all around the world and see a lot of different cultures and experiences. So that was amazing. And then we moved back. When we came back to the States, we moved to Sugar Land, Texas, just outside of Houston.
Yeah, that's where my dad lived.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Spent a lot of time in Sugar Land, actually.
Yep. So that's where I graduated from high school, and then came here to San Antonio for college.
Clements High School?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Clements.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's where I would have gone if I would have lived with my dad. So, yep. Matter of fact, it was not too long ago. My wife ran a marathon down there, and we drove by the high school and everything. And I was like, and I didn't know where I was at because it's been so long since I've been down there. And I was like, wait a minute, Clements is like right over there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's changed a lot since I've been there. It's been years since I've been there, but
yeah. So out of all of those places, just kind of a random question, what was kind of maybe your favorite place that you lived?
Jakarta.
Okay.
It was, from there, well, my mom and I, we had to fly to Singapore once a month to go to the orthodontist because the healthcare wasn't good in Jakarta. So once a month we flew to Singapore to go to the orthodontist, which was awesome because I got McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts and I got to go to the bookstore. So,
very nice.
But from there we were able to go to Australia, and we spent a summer in Australia. And one summer we flew all the way around the world with our travels. We left Jakarta and we stopped in the Seychelles for 24 hours. And then we went to Kenya and did a safari in Kenya. And then we went to Egypt, and I was able to go into the Great Pyramid in Egypt.
That's awesome.
We went to Italy. My uncle was stationed in Italy, so we spent some time there with them. And then we came back to the States and visited my grandparents in Oregon. And then we went back around the world, just back to Jakarta. So
that is so awesome. The world traveler for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So then you made your way back to the States. So went to high school. You graduated from there, I'm assuming, in Sugar Land.
Yep.
And then so you went off to college. Share some experiences that kind of stood with you over the years of those kind of college years.
I came to Trinity University here in San Antonio.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where I wanted a small school. And so I applied to UT, A&M, and Trinity, knowing that UT and A&M were going to be too big for me. So Trinity was basically my one and only.
Yeah.
So went to college in Trinity. And I told you that my freshman roommate introduced my husband and myself, and that's the reason that we got together and we're married. And my roommates and friends that I found at Trinity are my lifelong friends. They're my best friends now. So it was such a small school. It was smaller than my high school. So we really kind of got to know people well. So it was awesome. I would not have traded that for anything.
And that was the first time you, I guess, lived in San Antonio, right?
Yep. So,
any clubs, organizations, things that kind of drew you in on that campus?
I was a tour guide. So for the freshmen who were, I guess, seniors coming in for their freshman year, I was a tour guide at Trinity. So I gave the tours. And
was that, did they call them university ambassadors?
Yes, the TU ambassadors. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So crazy story, little side note here. So Trinity University, TU. I
Uh-huh.
went to college at the University of Tulsa, which we call TU. And I
Uh-huh.
was a TU ambassador as well.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You
Yeah.
and I both. See, we share something in common. We never knew it.
There you go. So I did that, and I was also part of their, it was called Program Board. It was their student organization that planned a lot of the activities on campus. I was in a sorority, but it was, Trinity only has local fraternities and sororities, so it's
Okay.
not a national. So it was a very different experience than most people think of with a fraternity or a sorority.
Right.
And actually, my freshman year, there was a fraternity pledge who was killed. So I didn't join my freshman year. I did my sophomore year, and they changed all of their pledging. There were no longer pledges. Everybody was a new active immediately. So they changed all of that situation. And all of those normal activities were basically changed because of this.
Gotcha. All right. So well, let me ask you this first question. So when you went to college, what was like your focus of study? What'd you major in?
I was an engineering major.
Okay.
I was very good at math and science. That's kind of what I liked. I had no idea what I wanted to do. My dad was an engineer, and he said, okay, do engineering, start off with engineering, and take a computer science class and see if you like that, which I did. I hated computer science. I only got through computer science because my partner that I was paired up with was a computer science major, and he knew what he was doing. So it was all group projects.
Yeah.
So I knew that wasn't going to happen. I spent my freshman year as an engineering major, and then decided at the end of my freshman year that that's not what I wanted to do. So I dropped engineering. I switched to straight math major and business minor. And I honestly would have switched to a business major, but my scholarships ran out after 4 years. So I didn't do that, but education wasn't even on my radar. I had roommates who were education majors, but that wasn't what I was going to do. So after college, I worked for 3 years at Enterprise Rent-A-Car in their management training program.
Here in San Antonio?
Here in San Antonio.
Okay.
And, I was washing cars in suit and heels sometimes, and decided that that was probably not what I wanted to do either.
What time frame is this? Like, what year is this?
This is 94 through
Okay.
97.
Okay.
And then in 1997, I decided I was going to go back, and I went back to Trinity. They have a master's in teaching program that's a 1-year program. So in 1 year, you get your education classes, you do your student teaching, and you get a master's in teaching.
Wow.
So,
Do they still have a 1-year program there?
Mm-hmm.
Do they really?
Yep. It's a 1-year Master's of Arts program. And usually you go through undergrad as an education major, and then this is tacked on. But because I wasn't an undergrad major, an undergrad education major, I had to take either 1 or 2 extra classes over the summer. So it started in May. We took summer classes. August, when school started, we did our student teaching from August to April, while we were doing a couple of classes this semester as well after school time. And then you graduate in May with a master's.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So you graduated, got your master's, and then from there?
Well, I did my student teaching at Mark Twain Middle School, and that was going to be what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a junior high or middle school teacher. I had 1 interview with Shirt Cibolo. That was my only interview that I had in February. And they offered me the job. I was going to be at Dobie Junior High School. I was going to be a math teacher at Dobie Junior High School. And I was so excited. I didn't have to do any more interviews. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. And Trinity has like a big education, I guess, I don't even know what the word is that I'm thinking of. Anyway, they have a great big thing where all the education majors come and all the teachers and professors, and Lou Pachelski, who was the principal at Clemens High School, was there. And she came up to me and she said, I am so glad that you're going to be at Clemens High School. We are so excited to have you in the math department. And I had no idea I was going to high school. And she left and I burst into tears because that is not what I wanted.
How did they not tell you this? So like you were interviewing for a junior high.
Well, I was interviewing for the district. So, you know, I did know I had 3 options: Clemens, Dobie, and Corbett. But I interviewed with the principal at Dobie at the time, and she said, yep, you're in, you know, we want you, all that kind of stuff. And that was February. So I guess by the time that they moved everybody around and figured out who left and stuff, the opening was at Clemens.
And so she's the one who just broke it to you just like that.
Yep. But I am so glad. I cannot imagine myself at a junior high now.
You know, when you just said that, it made me think about what you said at the beginning of the podcast, by how, you know, little changes or little things that we do add up to, and it's where you're supposed to be, you know, and that little minute change, and look at you, right? You're happy that you're a high school teacher. So it's crazy how life works out that way, right?
Exactly.
If we force
the plan.
Yeah, if we force the issue, it's not going to work out, right? Things are just going to happen the way that they're meant to be. So that's awesome. Okay, so then you taught at Clemens for how long?
I taught at Clemens until we opened here.
Okay.
So I've only been in the district. This is my 23rd year. So I was at Clemens the year before Steele opened. They asked me if I wanted to come here and be department chair. And I said, yep. So I did. So I was co-department chair at Steele, at Clemens that last year, just so that I could figure out what I was doing.
Right.
They also gave me one section of calculus so that I could start to teach calculus there, and so that I could go get help from the calculus teacher and department chair there. And then we opened Steele and I came here.
So since you've been here since the opening, this is your 16th year.
Cannot believe it's been that long.
Well, for me, I got here the next year, so I've been here 15. So that's easy math for me.
Yeah.
Just add 1. I can add 1 to numbers. That's where
there
it
you go.
off. So 23 years in education, 16 years now here at Steele High School. Let me ask you kind of a general question, just kind of see where you take it. Why do you teach? Why did you get into this profession, and why are you doing it now?
Well, I told you that education wasn't really in my mind at all when I started off. But I was one of those people that every summer that I came home, my mom had her friends lined up so that I could go tutor all of their kids, their high school kids, in math. So anytime I was at home, I was doing tutoring. I helped all of my college roommates and friends through their math classes. So I always kind of did that. And I liked it and I was good at it. So that's kind of what made me think, you know, teaching, because I really enjoyed it and I was good at it. So that's where I got into education. But the why now is the kids. I mean, the teaching upper level math, so many kids are afraid of calculus.
The word alone.
Exactly. You know, you meet somebody and you say, yes, I'm a high school math teacher, or I'm a teacher. Oh, what do you teach? Math. Oh, I hated math. What level? Calculus. Oh my gosh. You know, and it's always like, oh, no. Just in general, that I think a lot of people have that. But, you know, when I can hear my kids explaining stuff to other kids, that's why, you know, I'm doing it for them, and I'm doing it for those aha moments and those kids that reach back out to me years after they graduate and, you know, thank me for everything that I did and how grateful that they are that they took the class. And, you know, I've had multiple siblings. And, I talked to one kid and she's like, oh, my sister told me I had to take your class. There was no other option. I had to take your class and stuff. And so I guess that's why I do it.
Yeah, that's precisely my definition of success. Success for what many people probably think is, the grade that goes in the grade book.
Yeah.
I'm either successful because I got the A, or I'm successful because, whatever. But no, to me, I can find so much success in teaching a kid who makes a 70 because of the relationship that you form. And ultimately, like you just said, when those students come back, like we have a few students on campus today coming back to visit, though, whether they visit you or not, the fact is that when students come back to say thank you, those words of affirmation is my definition of success. So I don't gauge my success by how well they learn medical stuff in my room, because I know they're going to learn it. They're going to learn math. They're not going to remember some math, but they're going to remember some stuff. And it goes the same way for every class. So there's got to be more to it, right? I'm hoping that I prepare them for their medical school journey or their nursing school journey or whatever. But ultimately, all that matters is that they come back and they say thank you.
Exactly.
So that's definitely what I consider to be success for me. All right. So just share a teacher that you will always remember that you had. It can be elementary, middle school, high school, maybe even college. What was, so special about that teacher?
My high school calculus teacher. She was able to explain things and we understood, but she was fun at the same time. And I was just kind of in awe of her. And one of the first years that I taught calculus, I went to a math conference. And, there's all of these different sessions to go to and stuff. And one of the sessions, she was the teacher and she was the presenter. And I felt like, a little fangirl. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's my calculus teacher. So I had to go find her and introduce myself. And she's like, I remember you. And I'm like, what? You remember me? It had been 10 years or something.
Yeah.
And that she's the one that I'll always remember.
Yeah.
It was tough growing up and moving every 3 years. Like I had 3 different first grade teachers.
Wow.
So until I got to 8th grade and had that stability through 8th grade and high school, that's really kind of where I was able to build those relationships with my teachers too.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And it's awesome to hear that it was a calculus teacher at that too. I was listening to a podcast and they kind of came up with this activity that you can do with your kids. It can be selfishly motivated to do this assignment with your kids, but it's an opportunity to remind us as teachers why we're here and what we do. But you ask your kids on a sticky note to write down qualities of their favorite teacher ever. And then what you do is you take all those sticky notes and you get the students to try to categorize them on your whiteboards into those personality traits. You can see where that assignment would go because it wasn't always the nicest teacher. It wasn't always the, most relationship-centered teacher. Sometimes it's just some personal qualities. Like one of the hardest teachers I ever had in terms of personality was my geometry teacher, but I loved math. I don't think I made lower than a 98 in any of my math courses. So truth be told, if I were not teaching health science, I would want to teach math. But anyway, no one really liked him because of how strict and hard he was. And I loved him. Like I loved his personality. And it's just an interesting way to get your kids to think about that because that's how real life is. But then it's also an opportunity to introspectively kind of look at these are the qualities that kids are looking for in their favorite teachers. And it just kind of reminds us to kind of take a step back for a second, and just show
Which
grace
those
towards
qualities do I have?
Yes. Hopefully we can identify with them. All right. So without mentioning any kids' names, obviously, is there a pivotal moment, a great story, something that you can share where you realize that, you know, education is more important than the content we're teaching? Something that you'll never forget. Like this story will always stay with you and impact you.
Um, as educators, we have so many of those kids that we remember, and we remember for so many different reasons. But when we first opened Steele, you were there the second year, you know how small we were.
Yep.
And that first year, I had 5 different preps, and I had 2 of them in the same class period. So I was teaching, we had a Plato computer lab, I had honors algebra 2, I had honors pre-cal, I had regular pre-cal, and I had calculus AB. But my, the student that I'm thinking about, we kind of grew up with these kids. We had them at the beginning, and then we had to teach so many different things that we kind of moved with them.
Yep.
So we had blocks of kids that we had for multiple years in a row. And that's really, talking to the student is really kind of when I realized that it's not just you have them and they go away. They always come back, and they always mean something to you, and they always tell you something new when they come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that really kind of made me think that how important those relationships are, and that we always have to watch what we're doing and watch what we're saying. We have bad days. Everybody has bad days.
Yep.
But you got to really watch what you say, both positive and negative.
Absolutely.
Because it makes an impact and it stays with these students.
Yep. So true.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A couple of things that came to mind is, when I used to coach freshmen, when I first was here, the second year Steele was open, Coach Leach was coaching freshman basketball at the time, and I was serving as a volunteer coach. So I was coaching freshmen. Coach Leach then went straight football, and I kind of assumed that role of freshman basketball coach, and then you transition into being a JV coach, and sometimes you have those opportunities to stay with the kids, but it's so fun seeing that individual growth in students, the maturity levels, the light bulbs going off. And it's just, I agree with you. It's so impressionable to be able to witness it right in front of you, as opposed to, let's say, maybe a senior level only teacher, or even, let's say, an 8th grade teacher, that you get to see them and then they're off to high school and you never really get to see them again. But then maybe you see them 3 or 4 years later, as a middle school teacher, and you're just like, oh my gosh, look what you've become. We have that opportunity sometimes in what we teach to be able to see that happen. So very, very true. Question for you is, what do you personally do to improve as a teacher?
I like to give my kids surveys at the end of the year and just ask them, questions, and just have them be brutally honest. No names, no nothing. What did you like about the course? What can I do to make the course better? What didn't you like about the course? All that kind of stuff, because I think we learn more from the kids about what we need to do. If we just ask them the questions and listen, because they'll be brutally honest with you.
Yep.
They may, they say that, oh, I hated this class. This was the worst class I've ever taken, but I learned, and that sort of stuff is good. And I learn a lot about, okay, well, I thought that this was awesome and everybody was enjoying it, but that didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. Let's try to do something else.
Yeah.
So I listen to my kids a lot. And I'm teaching dual enrollment pre-cal, which is through UT. So it's on-ramps pre-cal. And they have a lot of different training modules for the students as well as for teachers. So I'm really enjoying listening to and going through a lot of those things that kind of get you back to, you were talking about how, the kid who makes a 70, you've taught him just as much, if not more, because of the relationships that you've had with him, and then that success. Through the UT modules, they talk a lot about like productive failure, and it's not being right all the time is not necessarily the best thing. If you have somebody who's wrong and you can fix what their misconceptions are, that's really learning. So a lot of that kind of stuff has really molded me, especially with my on-ramps classes. Those students, it's inquiry-based learning. So those students are learning and working together on stuff, and then they're coming up and they're presenting to the class. So, and some of their work is totally and completely wrong. But if I wait long enough, one of their classmates will say, hey, I think you did this when you should have done that.
Yep.
Are you really sure that that's what you meant? And they'll look and go, oh, no, that's not what I meant. So it's really kind of been interesting to go through and see that.
I love that. And I wrote it down while you were talking. I love that. Just that phrase, productive failure.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the book, Failing Forward. And have you, I don't know, I'm going to go on a limb here. Have you read the book by Carol Dweck, Growth Mindset?
No.
Okay.
I'm snippets out of there.
You're speaking her language right now.
The entire thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're speaking her language right now.
Yep. And Joe Bowler, I think, is another one that talked a lot about productive failure. But yeah, so that's one thing that we talk at the beginning of the year with all of our on-ramps kids. We talk to them about that because a lot of those upper level kids, they're not used to not getting stuff right. And they're going to get stuff wrong, and that's okay. That's your learning. And I'm looking across my classroom. Do you remember a couple of years ago when we got the posters that said yet?
Yep. ...
Yet.
Yep.
I tell them that all the time.
Yep.
You may not know it yet, but you will.
Right. Yep. And I've got my why. So my yet's not up there, but my why is up there.
Yep.
Well, that's really good because it made my heart happy when you said that about the piece where you survey your kids. Because I did that on video. I actually set up a video in my skills lab and asked students to tell me one thing that I sucked at and one thing that I was good at. And I don't know if you've attended one of my presentations before on 25 reasons why you might suck as a teacher. That's where that came from. And I was like, okay, well, let me do this. Let me find out what my kids think of it, good and bad. And it's such a valuable lesson. So I'm happy to hear that you're doing that. We got a couple more minutes here. The bell's going to ring here, but I want to try to get in these last few questions here. What is one thing that you struggle with as a teacher and one thing that you feel very confident as a teacher? And they can be short.
Right this year, getting a hold of my remote students. I'm
true.
Really, really struggling with them. I mean, I've got kids that I have no idea what they even look like.
Yep.
I have never laid eyes on them at all. And that hurts my heart. It's so hard this year because I don't know all of my kids the way that I should. So I'm really struggling with that this year.
Right.
And then I guess I'm confident with my subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easily said, right?
Yeah.
It comes natural. All right. Well, my last question that I always ask is if there is one teacher on campus that you would like to thank, who would that teacher be and why?
I'm going to say you.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you for doing this. I know it's a ton of your time. And you've got stuff to do, but I think it is important that we get to know each other. When we were small and we first opened, those first few years, we knew everybody.
Yep.
Absolutely everybody on campus. We'd get together, we'd hang out, we do all that kind of stuff. And we're so big now that we can't.
Yep.
So you're giving us the opportunity to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. And you do. You remind me of the times where we used to go hang out at Wolfar's house or Pivato's house. And
Yep.
those small little like Christmas parties were but it was like the whole staff,
Yeah.
and people would come and go. So very, very true. Well, I appreciate you because
One other thing, I want to thank you for suggesting like the best date night that my husband and I have ever had.
which one was that?
The restaurant that was right below the Acropolis in Athens.
Oh,
Remember that I went to
Trophy.
Trophy.
Yes.
Yeah. So we went to Greece a couple of weeks after you did, and you gave me that recommendation, and it was amazing.
Probably one of the best locations, restaurants, in my opinion, everywhere that I've ever been. And I know I haven't traveled as much as you, but that restaurant location and view of the Acropolis at night as the sun is setting and the lights illuminate the Acropolis, it's more about the experience. Forget about the food, which was great.
Right. I don't even remember the food. I just remember the experience.
I do remember the food, and I definitely remember the shot of Uso they gave at the very beginning too, because that stuff is strong. But anyway, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending time with me. I know it's an hour that we could have better utilized to plan, to grade, to do whatever. But I sincerely thank you for participating, and I hope you have a blessed day, and we will catch up soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Keeping Up with the Knights. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure you subscribe and click the notification button so you know when the next episode is released, and then share it with your friends and colleagues. If you're so inclined to do so, would you please rate and review this podcast to help me grow our community of listeners? I hope there was something that you heard today that allowed you to connect outside the classroom. Now, more than ever, we need each other as a support system, and we need to continue to make this the best high school in the state of Texas. Thank you, Knight Nation. Now, go be someone's champion today.